Hello, guys. We have today, Wednesday, April 1st, and we are talking digestive system processes and teeth. And I have this Jeffrey goofball with me in here today. I intentionally brought Jeffrey because he's missing some of his teeth. I'll show you that at the end. And I thought, what a better dog to hear about the importance of teeth, especially one that doesn't have any. All right, so we are going to go over some of the things we already covered yesterday. There's an extra video I want you to watch that goes over everything in more detail, but talking about the processes and how we control all of these steps: ingestion, propulsion, mechanical digestion, chemical digestion, absorption, and defecation or elimination. And then we're going to talk about specifically the teeth today, okay, as far as our notes go. All right, so this kind of goes along with yesterday's notes and these different digestive processes. So the best part about the digestive system is eating. I mean, we all love to eat. We have taste buds to make this process enjoyable, so that people continue to eat, right? We want to enjoy our food. And so that first step there is ingestion, right? Now, it can vary a little bit as far as the order of these things go. The video goes through it a little bit more specifically. I want you to watch the video to get that order down. I'm not sure everything pops up correctly for you here, but after you eat, and we'll talk about your teeth and the role in that, you need to undergo the mechanical breakdown of food. And your teeth are very important in that process as well. And so we chew our food to break it down mechanically, take a piece of pizza and break it down into smaller pieces of pizza. And that process of chewing is called mastication. Mentioned that yesterday. To chew is to masticate. You use your masseter muscle right here when you do chew. And then other mechanical processes that happen include the churning of your stomach. So this rolling action in your stomach. But something else that happens further down is segmentation. I'm going to show you a picture of that. But it's actually another mechanical breakdown or mixing that happens of food throughout your GI tract, gastrointestinal tract. All right, to get food down, we move it through there, but also even beginning in the mouth, we start off with chemical breakdown as well, or chemical digestion. Your salivary glands and your saliva has the enzyme amylase in it that breaks down sugars. This is why you can suck on a sucker and it will disappear eventually, even without chewing it. Because the amylase breaks down sugars or carbohydrates in your mouth. And so you start chemically breaking food down even in your mouth early on, but you're going to continue to add enzymes all throughout the process that's going to break down food throughout. And the whole reason why we want to chemically break down through food is because of absorption. The whole reason why we eat is to absorb nutrients into our body so we can build our body and have it functioning. So your body is made up of atoms and molecules, and we get the stuff that makes your hair and your nails and your bone and your blood and everything we've learned about this year is all just really from the food you eat. We're just changing chemicals from one form to the other. And so the digestive system is all about absorbing those chemicals. And so most of it gets absorbed into our blood capillaries. We got tons of them surrounding our intestines. And then some of it goes into the lymph capillaries too. Some of the lipids and fats and things like that. All right, so as we start off ingesting in our mouth and this mechanical and chemical breakdown and how we get it all the way through our roughly 30-foot tube, you are a 30-foot tube that runs through your body. It's basically like you're outside of your body on the inside. It's It's very weird. Is through propulsion. Propulsion. So propulsion just means to move something. And so as we move things through, we do a few things. The first active movement that happens in our throat is the swallowing action, or deglution is this active swallowing. But then also peristalsis. I describe that as kind of squeezing toothpaste out of a tube. That is how we move food through our esophagus as well as through the small intestine. And then the definite last stop for your digestive system is elimination, this process of eliminating food through the form of feces. Feces is basically all the food you didn't absorb, with some of like your sloughed off cells, bacteria, kind of like dead blood. Bilirubins end up in there too. And then things that were undigestible. So if you've ever noticed like corn per se or something else show up, those are just things that your body didn't absorb as it passed through this tube that runs through your body. All right. One thing I mentioned yesterday that I'd like to show again here a little bit more clear is the difference between peristalsis and segmentation. So peristalsis is the moving of food. So it's this squeezing action, and you've got smooth muscle that lines your whole alimentary canal or your GI tract. And it's just squeezing in this rhythmic wave, like one part contracts and the next part contracts and the next part contracts to push it all the way down. He was going to get out soon. And that's going to be the propulsion part of things. But mechanical digestion, breaking food down, is involved in segmentation, which we see over here. So I don't know if you've ever played around with one of those like balloons that were filled with sand. I remember playing with those sometimes as a kid. And so that action where you take the sand and you might like squeeze one section and it pushes it to the one end, and you squeeze another and it pushes it to the other. This is like segmentation. So if you look at this picture, imagine that you take this section that's got a little bolus of food, a ball of food right here, and you squeezed it in half. It would push the foodstuffs above and below. And so let's say this was more of a liquid substance or just some other particle. Now I have one section over here that's mixed kind of half and half, and this section here that's mixed half and half. And then this churning action that your intestines do, okay, I think we had that in purple on our diagram yesterday, ends up showing sort of how this stuff is mixed forward and back, forward and back. It's kind of this little dance of pushing the food in half and then in half and in half and in half, and then it ends up mixing the whole thing all around. And so that's what segmentation is. And so that mechanical breakdown, mixing of food continues even in your small intestines as well. All right. So on your lesson plan for today, for Plan Book, I want you to watch this video. So when this is all over, please go to Plan Book and click the next link to watch this video. He goes through those processes in more detail better than I just did. It's a great clip, and it sort of gives a wonderful overview of this whole system that we're going to get into everything else in more detail. All right. This is a picture in your notes, but don't worry about pausing the video and copying it all down yet. We'll come back to all this stuff in more detail later. But we're talking about stuff in the mouth. So I just wanted to point out some structures. So we have the tongue, right here. It's kind of this crazy, weird muscular structure. It's basically, it fills this space from like where your teeth are and your mandible. It's all up here in the lower half of your jaw. It's much larger than you probably would think. Almost the entire piece is anchored to the very bottom of the base, essentially, of your oral cavity. And you've got your salivary glands. They end up producing, sorry, those are the tonsils, but you have your salivary glands in here, and they end up producing saliva. And saliva is mostly water. It keeps your mouth moist, but when you start thinking about food and what's for dinner, or maybe your very, very favorite thing that you can't get right now, like Chinese food, or I don't know, pizza, whatever really is your jam, You might start salivating just thinking about that food that you're going to eat. And that process is the first chemical steps of digestion there in your mouth. So when you do eat, you're going to masticate that food. You're going to chew it all up using your teeth. I wanted you guys to note that the teeth are embedded in bone. Top teeth are in the maxilla. Bottom teeth are in the mandible. They're embedded in bone. And they are meant to mechanically break down that food into smaller pieces as you chew it up. But to position your food in your mouth, you use your tongue. And so your tongue helps position food underneath your teeth for chewing, but then also it's going to push the food to the back of the mouth when you're ready to swallow or do the deglutition portion of that swallowing reflex. And actually the swallowing reflex gets triggered essentially as you push your tongue to the back of the mouth. So if I said swallow right now, just like a fake swallow, even though your mouth might be empty, notice what happens to your tongue. It goes to the roof of your mouth and kind of pushes backwards. It's this reflex that's going to push things down. And so your tongue is really responsible for manipulating food around your mouth. All right. This picture isn't in your study guide, but it is in your textbook. I want to talk about your deciduous teeth versus your permanent teeth. So your deciduous teeth, we normally refer to as your baby teeth. Think about that word deciduous and maybe some trees that you know are deciduous. Deciduous trees lose their leaves. The deciduous teeth are the teeth you lose. Okay, your baby teeth or milk teeth is really what they're more technically referred to. Permanent teeth are your adult teeth that you hopefully keep for life. You have fewer deciduous teeth, okay? And so as your adult teeth come in, you get more. And so you want to consider that you've got the same number on the top and the bottom of your mouth. And so the main thing I want you to remember is that adults have 32 if you include the wisdom teeth, which don't end up developing between like the ages of 17 to 25. So those wisdom teeth, once, let's say you have a full set of wisdom teeth, you would have 32 teeth. Many of us end up getting those wisdom teeth removed, right? But a regular mouthful of adult teeth would have 32, although most of us actually don't. And so one thing you might notice at the dentist is that they're constantly counting how many teeth you have to see where you're at in development. And the reason why our wisdom teeth oftentimes have to get removed is our jaws are evolutionary getting smaller. And so what ends up happening is basically you have a full house of teeth in your mouth, but as they grow in, they start to grow in sideways. And when they do that, they get stuck into the bone, and it's very, very, very painful. And they call that an impacted tooth. An impacted tooth is one that's stuck in the bone. And so we have to surgically remove it. And wisdom teeth tend to start growing at a funky angle all the time. And so they end up becoming impacted. All right, last little thing that you're going to label here, trying to keep it as short as possible for you guys today, is this picture on page 5 of your tooth. So different structures. The first part are kind of like the parts you see and then the part you don't see. So going down kind of the left side of the picture here, the top part, your pearly whites that we see are the crown. That's the part that sticks up and above your gums. And your gums are called the gingiva, like gingivitis, inflammation of your gums. And then the neck is essentially where that tooth comes into the gums. And then the root is the part we don't see. So if you pull out your tooth, that's the piece that's stuck underneath is the root, right? Just like the root of a tree. And then up top, kind of the three main regions from outermost to innermost of your tooth is the enamel. That's the white piece that we want to keep brushed and clean all the time. The enamel is actually when you lose your tooth. That's okay, Jeffrey. The enamel is when you lose your tooth. Hold them out. It's actually what ends up producing your tooth later on. So actually, this is what sort of comes in and fills in. That's my husband. That's what comes in and fills in once you've lost your tooth. The dentin Right? The dentin is essentially the bulk of your tooth. So notice all the stuff in blue here, that's the dentin. And so that's what makes up the majority of what is a tooth, is the dentin. Enamel is just what covers it. And then in the core, the very middle of it, you have your pulp cavity. And in that pulp cavity, you've got your nerves and you have your blood vessels. This is why, one, it hurts when you pull out a tooth, and two, what ends up happening, like you end up bleeding a little bit too if you lose a tooth, because blood vessels have been ruptured in there. And then lastly, we have the bone, okay, right here. This is all the porous substance that it's stuck in. And then what connects it into the bone? Well, if you remember from when we did joints, we talked about immovable joints. And one of the types, I didn't ask you to know this for the test, but one of the types of immovable joints was called a gomphosis, and that was the joint between the tooth and the bone. So where a tooth and a bone comes into contact with each other is a joint. And so there's a ligament that holds it in place, much like our ligaments join bones to bones. And so we call that the periodontal ligament. Like an orthodontist is your tooth doctor, okay? And so we have that kind of word, dontal is this reference to tooth. So the periodontal ligament is essentially what adheres the connection between the bone and the tooth. But the main thing that cements it in there is called cement or cementum. And that cementum is what keeps your tooth, it holds the tooth in place. All right. And then, like I mentioned before, your gum is the gingiva. If you have a buildup of plaque or tartar, that's gingivitis, inflammation of your gums. So that's the gums that you want to keep nice and healthy through flossing and brushing your teeth regularly. Okay, I think that's everything on the structures of the tooth. As a little for fun here, I added some pictures of Jeffrey's teeth, and I have a little video of Jeffrey's teeth. So shortly after I took these pictures, I recorded a little video, but he is missing tons of his teeth. So he had a full set of teeth, I think, when he was a puppy, and he lost them. Your teeth just have dogs have deciduous teeth as well, lose their teeth. But then his adult teeth never came in. So he has these huge gaps. Look at that. And then the ones in the back are really, really worn down too. We've asked the vet about it before, and they said some dogs, this just happens too. They don't really get dentures for dogs. And then this is just for your guys' viewing pleasure here. Check out these chompers. We'll see if the video works. Maybe if I close this, it'll help. Well, maybe not, but you guys get the idea. You can watch that for fun, I guess, at the very end of this. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you later.